Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Dr. Rachel Allyn, who's here to share with us her new book, The Pleasure is All Yours. Reclaim your body's bliss and reignite your passion for life. So are you looking to connect with your body's natural wisdom? Well, today, Dr. Rachel Allyn's going to share with us just that. Dr. Rachel Allyn is a licensed clinical psychologist, certified yoga instructor, public speaker, and relationship columnist. She is the founder of Yoga Psych LLC, a psychotherapy practice for adults that blend Western medicine with Eastern philosophy and connects the mind with the body. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Rachel Allyn.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I like to say, well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you. I got to introduce that word pleasure as much as I can to help us reclaim it.
Well, and gosh, why don't we start there? I mean, what a great title for a book. What made you think of that?
You know, it's interesting. As a clinical psychologist, I have worked with clients over the years that naturally they want to feel happy and joy, and they want peace, they want connection, they want intimacy. But what I realize is that for my clients that are primarily all coming from American culture, we're coming from a culture that doesn't really help us with these foundational aspects to achieve joy and happiness. And mainly because we've had two major disconnects. One, which has been a mind-body disconnect. We've really split our mind from our body. And we've also really disconnected from the healthy healing aspects of pleasure. And moments of pleasure are really what make up longer lasting states of joy and happiness. So what I realize is that people are really starting from the top down rather than the bottom up of connecting to their body and owning moments of different types of healthy pleasures from within first in order to have longer lasting states of connection, joy, and intimacy. So that's really a lot of what the book is about. First, starting with how did we get to this place that we're feeling such a lack of pleasure in our lives?
Well, you just asked my question. How do we get here?
Well, I start with talking about my method of bodyfulness. And so now most everybody has heard about mindfulness. Of course, it's pretty ubiquitous at this point. But what we've learned now, what science and research tells us is that we need to do more than just notice what's happening within. We need to actually have ways to move the stress and trauma out of us because stress and trauma get stuck in our bodies. For example, have you ever had times where you had a mental insight about something, but then your behavior kept repeating itself?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure many people have had that.
Right. So it's like, what is happening there? What's going on that we can mentally understand it, but then our behavior and our reactivity seems to still be these kind of older ways that we want to change. And what we now know scientifically is that these old stressors and traumas going back to childhood and also even intergenerational trauma from our ancestors can be really lodged in our body and result in nervous system activation and reactivity and other sorts of diseases or dis-ease really in the body. So once we incorporate the body as well into our healing, we're more integrated. So we can really learn it not only from our mental brain, but our heart brain, our gut brain, our intuition, our more reactive patterns. And so my book talks a lot about this idea of bodyfulness, which really takes mindfulness to the next level. Like I call it mindfulness unleashed. Because it starts with embodied mindfulness, which is wonderful. We all need to know like what's happening within us, our mind, our body, our energy, our digestion, our senses, different muscular activation, different sort of gut responses. So all these inner working Y systems in our body, we start with just awareness of where we're at and what are our emotions within. And then it goes to that next level of what do we do with that information? And that's where mindfulness tends to stop. It's awareness, but then what do we really do with that? And so that's where we bring in different ways to release from the body with movement, with crying, with tears, think of all that we absorb every day, and it can get lodged in us and cause us to feel unhappy if we don't have ways to recognize it and release it. And then the third part of bodyfulness is really then from this place of inner knowing and knowing what to do, we can feel more self-regulated. We have better body and mind confidence and trust in ourselves. And that really opens us up to receiving the different pleasures in life that are our birthright, which, however, a lot of people can feel guilty to receive, especially women.
Yeah, you hear about that all the time where it's kind of like this push and pull where it's, you want to get to this place where you are content and happy and feeling pleasure. But at the same time, it's like we're so busy, we seem selfish if we take that time to ourselves.
Right. And so we have to do some deprogramming from these old messages that really go back to our puritanical roots in the US. That tell us that it's lavish, it's indulgent, that it takes us off course from toiling in the fields and industrial civilization. Because what we know is that actually having moments of pleasure, and I talk in my book about the different types of pleasure. I'll come back to that in a moment, but that we now really understand that having these moments of pleasure, and it also means having balanced pleasure, which means not being overly attached to always avoiding suffering and seeking pleasure. But when we have these moments here or there, it really allows for our longevity and our resilience. It's what gives us that energy to be available to others, to our job, to our children. But that all the self-sacrificing simply leads to burnout, resentment. It comes out in misdirected ways, whether it be road rage or kicking the dog, whatever it may be. And so this method that we've had of this philosophy of just abstaining and working and don't let yourself, feel good has really done a disservice to us. And we see that in how prevalent anxiety disorders are in American culture.
Well, I know in your book you talk about pleasure defined. I think a lot of times people don't even know what that means.
Right. And they might not know what it means. Or what I've found is that we have a very reductionist attitude that it just means sex. And we've lost all of the nuance and sort of all the other beautiful ways pleasure can show up in our lives. And I talk about in the book how there can be sensual pleasure, just thinking of how when you take that first bite of food after you've cooked a delicious meal, or the sensual pleasure of being out in nature and smelling the lilac bushes. Also about playful and creative pleasure, which we encourage in our children to be playful, but then as adults, we lose sight of that, even though playfulness and creativity is really important just for overall mind, body health. And it can be a wonderful chance to learn and grow. Also, there's liveliness as pleasure, which can show up in either more adventurous times in our life or even in our livelihood. And it's really about having those flow states. I don't know if you've ever had those moments where you really felt in a state of flow, where you were really integrated, focused, maybe just sort of time went by quickly because you were so immersed in your experience. That would be that type of pleasure. There's also altruistic pleasure, which is the pleasure we receive in giving or sharing and kindness to somebody else. And then there's erotic and sexual pleasure, which is the one that tends to be associated with the word pleasure. And that's also where we've associated pleasure as maybe a dirty word, which is really sad when we think about here's something that's very life affirming and very really enriching. It's something that contributes again to joy and happiness. And so how is something that is so powerful, how has it become a dirty word? And I think it is because of its kind of the power in pleasure. And like I said, because there can be people who do fall out of balance with it, and they don't have the ability to tolerate, any moments of discomfort. And so they're always in a place of avoidance and then over rely on pleasure. And so that's where bodyfulness is so important, because it's really about self-regulating from within, looking within us to manage and cope and ride the wave of our discomfort, which then allows us to feel more trust in ourselves and to feel more grounded and centered. And that really helps open us up to just seeing some of the delight and bliss and beauty around us as well.
So is there a middle path that people can walk? Let's say they're not overindulging, but at the same time, they're really kind of getting to this point where they're allowing themselves to have pleasure.
That's a great question, a great point that I definitely do talk about in the book is that middle path. And it's really true for a lot of things in life of that it's we don't want to have none, we don't want to have it all the time. It's about balance and in our personality, in our relationships, and our time management. But absolutely that's the case with pleasure. It's a nuanced thing to have a relationship with. And all of life, I mean, life will always present us with challenges and stressors. But when we aren't so afraid of being in them, when we feel we have the strength to endure, by having those coping tools with our bodyfulness, with whether it be releasing with movement or with words and getting support from somebody, or with our own practice of containment, giving ourselves a hug, or feeling like we can from kind of the body up really find ways to handle some of our discomfort, then we aren't always in a state of running from it to pleasure. We can have more of that balance. And I think also from this inner knowing that bodyfulness brings, we also know our limits and our set points. So we say take sensual pleasure, for example, and how, we've all had times when that piece of cake tasted so good that we want another. And I think that from that place of inner knowing of body connection and really accepting and being kind with our body and the set points and limits it tells us, we're able to say, what, actually that large piece of cake I just had was enough. I feel satiated. And also it's okay if we do have a second piece sometimes too. I think that another aspect of our repressed American culture, at least historically, is that we can be so caught up in this good, bad, right, wrong. And, sometimes it's okay to overindulge a little bit. And sometimes there's reasons why we haven't been able to. So I think having some mental and emotional flexibility that it comes and goes. It's not permanent, but that we can really, it's our right. And we are entitled as human beings to feel good and to do our best to get out of states that feel painful and to find really healthy sources of pleasure in our life. And what's interesting too is that research shows that when people who really are connected to their bodies and connected to receiving life's pleasures tend to really be more compassionate and altruistic with others. So this isn't a selfish endeavor. It's really the building blocks to us to have more collective joy and happiness and really care for others, which, that collective care is so important right now.
Oh my gosh, we all need that right now more than anything. But I found
Right?
it, yeah, my goodness, but I found it like really interesting in your book. You talk about just like how people have been repressed for so long. And you did so much great research for this. Was there anything that surprised you when you were doing your research?
Right. Initially I was surprised to hear that the United States is considered one of the most repressed places in the world. And it's right up there with the Vatican and some Muslim countries. And so I think it's easy for us to sort of have this us them outlook that, we have it figured out and other countries or other cultures don't. But I think it's fascinating to find out that actually this is a big part of a problem, and to learn what are the costs of being so repressed. What's the price we pay for being disconnected from our body, from our emotions, from communicating how we feel? And yet, think of it. I don't know about you, but growing up, I did not get classes in elementary school and high school that was emotions 101 or communicating your feelings 101. And these are such fundamental aspects of being human. And they're so essential to connection, to not just in our family life, but in our business life. And so to me, I think I was raised in a more kind of open-minded household. So for me, I've always thought it just seems so bizarre that we don't talk about these things that are just fundamentally human. And I really wanted to find out why. What does it due to? And there's a lot of different influences, everything from religion and, like I said, the Industrial Revolution and different aspects that, in which dominant beliefs came about that to connect to our bodies or to our emotions is is primitive, it's savage, it's animalistic, and we don't want to be that way. We want to be, logical and rational. But and being logical and rational is wonderful. I'm in no way anti-logic or rationality, but it's again about balance. That we are animals, we are human animals, and so if we don't let ourselves also have these moments that are not about rationality, then we're really cutting out aspects of ourselves. If we don't want to feel our feelings, or we only want to feel the good ones, we're cutting off really valuable sources of information within us. And so I'm excited because I think that we're moving forward. There's a real renaissance right now with more holistic psychology, mind-body psychology, recognizing that our body isn't just some sort of primitive, savage thing full of wanton urges, but that it's actually really wise. It tells us when to stay in balance. It knows how to keep us in homeostasis. However, we mentally override the signals, rather than sleep, which is what our body is asking for, we just have another cup of coffee, or these ways in which we think our minds, as mind over body is the way. So there's obviously a lot of different elements here, but it all really boils down to, like, can we really be in our body, in our emotions, and know what to do with that information, and allow some of our humanness, and how that can really open us up to, yes, some of the pleasure and joy and beauty around us and in our relationships, rather than having a lot of the guilt and the shame for just being who we really are.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dr. Rachel Allyn in regards to her new book, The Pleasure is All Yours. Reclaim Your Body's Bliss and Reignite Your Passion for Life. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an actor, public speaker, or an executive telling your story over Zoom? Jean-Louis Rodrigue and Scott Weintraub's new book, Back to the Body, takes the process they use to coach top Hollywood talent like Margot Robbie, Jack Black, and Ke Huy Quan, and makes it available to everyone. Using your body and its energy as a point of departure, your work will gain an enhanced level of performance and depth. Back to the Body, available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Every day, pets are surrendered and abandoned. For these helpless and hurting animals, Paws Humane Society acts as a voice for the voiceless, providing hope for a brighter future. You can make a difference in the life of a shelter pet. Become a humane hero today. Just $10 a month will provide much-needed food, shelter, medical care, and love. It takes a community. It takes heroes like you. Together we can. Together we will. Together we are Paws Humane. Visit pawshumane.org to be a hero in every animal story.
What if everything we think we know about addiction, depression, anxiety, and trauma is missing the one key element that will actually let you walk away from them for good? My name's Bob Gardner, founder of The Freedom Specialist and creator of a body-based approach that eliminates suffering and creates happiness, health, and well-being on autopilot. You can read all about it in my book, Built for Freedom, or start your own adventure toward lasting freedom at thefreedomspecialist.com.
If you want to stop divorce fast, you do not need to waste years in therapy. You do not need to work on yourself, and you do not even have to have your spouse on board. If your spouse wants out, if they're filing for divorce, separation, or having an affair, what you need is a proven process to turn your marriage around. Book a free breakthrough session with us at highthrivecoaching.com/apply.
Dr. Richard London, who has 25 years of experience being known as the Man of Steel with the Heart of Velvet, presents the Life Wellness System, The Road to Yes, a mentoring system that brings you to becoming a wellness heir. Imagine having wealth, wellness, love, peace, and spirituality in abundance and balance now. Visit doctorateoflife.com or call 720-213-8021 for a free 15-minute wellness evaluation.
The first thing you need to know about me is that I love my kids, but they are not my everything. they used to be, but that's when my entire life fell apart. In order to pick back up the pieces, I had to put the love I have for myself before everything else, including my kids. I'm Jessica Dennehy, and I own multiple businesses. I'm a best-selling author, and I have all the strategies that I've used to make my life what it is today. And I'm going to teach you how to do them in my new book, Selfish is a Superpower. So go get your copy today on Barnes & Noble or jessicadennehy.com.
Announcing a revolutionary tool for wellness. Scalar Light has the ability to enhance and harmonize your own bioenergies. With Scalar Light, you can get started in just minutes and begin feeling better the very next day. Scalar Light is a remote energy that gently and subtly works with your own body's bioenergies, increases pro-cellular wellness, and enhances your body's immunity.
Experience the benefits of Scalar Light. Try a complimentary 15-day experience at scalarlight.com.
In your hands lie ancestral patterns. These patterns shape how you think, what you struggle with, and experiences you love, your life pattern. We're going into the latest neuroscience of biological hand analysis, a realm beyond palmistry where science and the soul entwine. Hand analysis is the latest method to transform lifelong patterns. I am Master Hand Analyst Brent Bruning. Join us and visit thepowerinyourhands.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our special guest, Dr. Rachel Allyn, who's here sharing with us her book, The Pleasure is All Yours. Reclaim Your Body's Bliss and Reignite Your Passion for Life. Where do you think a lot of people kind of get stuck when it comes to really starting to appreciate their bodies and themselves?
Oh, yes. Well, I think I'll just starting with our bodies. There's sort of our bodies and there's our identity, and the two can overlap, and they can also be separate. But I mean, we have had a lot of othering, whether it be with regard to our bodies or the color of our skin or our class or our religion. So and there are other, I think, scholars out there that certainly have written and will continue to write on this even more eloquently than I can. But I do know that, out of fear, we create these categories and this us versus them. And we see that in the ways bodies are othered. Some are prioritized over others based on the color of their skin, their performative value, if they're conforming to sort of the dominant way as far as appearance. We know that there's certainly been a lot of marginalization around bodies, whether if they're handicapped, too short, too tall, too wide. Women's bodies have been objectified, and that's been, a way that's really kept women distracted from a lot of their potential when we think of the time and money we put into contorting our bodies into these different ways that are supposed to be, what we've identified as attractive versus not. And so it's unfortunate, because what I really wish we could do is just celebrate the diversity of our human bodies and all its forms and performative value, or just simply as sensate beings. To embrace the difference and embrace aging. I think aging is another thing. And as women in particular age, they're rendered sort of invisible because their bodies are not part of what the kind of dominant idea of attraction is. So it takes I talk about this in the book too, I point out in the first section of the book, like, here are these problems, and it's not to depress us or shame us, but just to really to invite the reader to have their own personal act of revolution, to say, no, I don't need to conform to some of these viewpoints of how I should have my body look, or how I should not be emotional, or how I need to be buttoned up. that each one of us are entitled to really be our authentic self, to be embodied, to express ourselves. And I talk about expression rather than repression as really key, not only just to feel more connected to ourselves, but it does lead to more physiological release of stress when we do express ourselves and we do release. So yeah, I think it's up to all of us to recognize the ways we've been programmed with these different storylines about how we're supposed to look, act, behave according to our gender and our body type and our class. And yet we get to say, we aren't going to buy in to those. We're going to actually buy into the magnificence of our body and all it does for us each day, all the interworking systems that come together to help us show up, for you and I to have this conversation. It's really quite miraculous. And so yes, body positivity, body acceptance, but even trying to have body love. It doesn't mean we love our body every day, all the time, but to really recognize the miraculous feats it does for us each day.
My goodness. I mean, and to kind of piggyback on what you were talking about, just our expectations for people. I mean, we've had such expectations for our young boys and men for such a long time, and that's got to put a lot of pressure on them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody wins, male, female, non-binary. Nobody really wins when we tell people that they have to be in these categories, these limited boxes of what it means to be male versus female. It really, it limits and cuts everybody off. And as a relationship, one of my specialty areas as a psychologist is relationships. And I do a lot with individuals about relationships, but then of course, a lot of couples as well. And I see how, unfortunately, so many people raised as male have been taught to be cut off from their feelings and emotions. And so many females have been raised to be cut off from their bodies. And so no wonder we have such disconnect, whether it be with emotional intimacy or physical intimacy. And so I think if we could really cultivate that, all human beings deserve to be connected to their body. They benefit from being connected to their body. Same as emotions and feelings, that these are all really valuable sources of information. And that, yes, it takes vulnerability to share our emotions, our feelings, and our bodies with somebody else. Absolutely. But if we are able to have that intuition and know, who has earned our trust to be vulnerable with, and that takes time and practice. But if we could all do that, all genders and everything in between, then I think we wouldn't have so much us against them. There'd be more of a sense of unity and just understanding. So much of what I see in my practice, because there's such a lack of communication, not only communication within one's own self, but communication with their partner. I see all the problems that ensue, just in all the misunderstandings that ensue, because people are too afraid just to really verbalize, how they're feeling and their needs and their wants with another person. It's really too bad.
I mean, are you finding like now that, just men and women alike are really more open to sharing their feelings and really doing this type of research to find out what they're all about, what their authentic self is all about, and what pleasure means to them?
I do think, we've definitely had a tremendous shift and are in quite a shift. And some of it is I also see a self-selecting group of people who are interested in getting help. I think it's a wise person who knows when to get a little extra support and go to a professional. So I tend to, with my clients, and I tend to sort of run in circles of people who are really always seeking and learning and wanting to grow. And my hope, and part of why it's important to me to take insurance and to also have sliding fee scales, is that I really think that not everybody does have access to some of this important work, whether it be with the yoga psychology workshops I do, or the retreats I do, or the therapy sessions. That's part of why I wanted to write this book too, is that just at a price point that could also be more accessible to people who are just maybe more in survival mode too. that to think about connection to their body and having bodyfulness, to think about balance, pleasure might be really beyond what they're able to focus on if they're really more in a survival mode. So that's where the bodyfulness piece is also helping people with the stress and trauma that is in their body to really have that move through first, because we need to feel safe and some level of safety and groundedness to welcome pleasures in our life. But overall, yes, I do think, to your question, that there's a lot more. We're really breaking down some of the old scripts and old storylines. And I see this a lot, especially, younger generations. I'm Gen X, I guess, is the category I fall into as a 40-something woman. But I really do appreciate how some of the younger generations are really kind of pushing the envelope when it comes to how we define relationships and our paradigms around relationships, and also around gender and sexuality. So, it's all, I think of my mom and my grandmother and how they helped pave the way for me, and then how, we've paved the way for some of the younger generations. But yeah, change is absolutely is happening. We're opening our eyes to having, being more open-minded as far as our bodies, our connection to our emotions, to pleasure, to different types of relationship paradigms. So I think that's great.
Oh, finally, right? Finally, we get to be in, and we live in such a great age right now where this type of discussions can be had and people aren't going, oh, that's full of baloney, because I think maybe like 20 or 40 years ago, there might have been a different mindset with this.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think that it would have seemed maybe more salacious or scandalous or really extra hippie, like really hippie dippy, too airy fairy. And that's where also my work, I mean, I have my PhD, I've done a dissertation, I have a real research background, but I also do a lot clinically, and also am certified as a yoga teacher. So I do think of my work, and there's a lot of other people out there as well, that's really in that middle path of it's empirically science-based and draw upon a lot of research on neuroscience, but then also really draws upon these ancient wisdom traditions that come from Buddhist influences or Hindu influences or yogic influences and things like Ayurvedic medicine. And we say, like, what happens when we integrate all of this? So it's really the best of all worlds, sort of what the wisdom of these ancient philosophies, but then with the modern science and intelligence that we also have now. So I think that's part of what's really great about being a holistic psychologist right now is, there is this welcoming of integrative medicine and seeing the whole person. So I think that's great.
We're just at this point where people are really open to looking at the whole person. And I just love that. And I felt like your book was so informational. It had so many good tips. It had a lot of good information. When you were getting this all together, I mean, it must have been just like, I mean, you have so much great stuff. I don't even know how you pulled it all together like you did,
Yeah. It's funny. I joke that I would definitely call myself more on the extroverted side of the scale. And for me, I joke that it took a global pandemic for me to finally sit down and say no to the other distractions and social interactions. But it has been a work in progress, because I've been a psychologist for almost 2 decades and have, at least I certainly started my studies about 25 years ago. So, and it's also a lot of connected to how I grew up and growing up in what psychologists call a sex positive household, which really just meant that I had parents, primarily my mom, who just talked openly about the body, free of shame, and a dad who really encouraged me in athletics. So I was really connected to my body, both as an athlete and just a kind of a human being, as a sexual being, as we all are. So I think a lot of this book started just from growing up and the family I grew up in, and then bringing it all together, but finally having just that time and space, nothing like a pandemic and quarantining to just get you in front of your computer to really finally get it all cohesively written.
Well, you did a beautiful job with this, and I was real impressed with this. Rachel, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
The best place is my website. So that's drrachelallyn.com, and then Rachel and Allyn, Allyn. Got to have that unique spelling of my name, Allyn. That's the best place. And I am also on Instagram as Dr. Rachel Allyn as well. But through my website, you can see access to that takes you to the book website, which is also the pleasureisallYoursBook.com. And I have some pre-order bonuses right now, depending on when this airs. But there's some bonuses for pre-ordering, or if you're in a book club and want to order in bulk, there's definitely some gifts for you there. But those are probably the best places to reach me and find out about my retreats, my yoga workshops, the book, and a lot of the work I do. I do some pleasure coaching as well for people where it's less about psychotherapy, but wanting a little bit more direct, active approach in the here and now. So pleasure coaching, that's the next frontier.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And gosh, people can go to you and learn all sorts of great things. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me and giving me a chance to share my work. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Well, thank you, Rachel. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Pleasure is All Yours, Reclaim Your Body's Bliss and Reignite Your Passion for Life. The Pleasure's All Yours is available to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.